Welcome. It's so great to see you today in the chat. I see a few of you were already saying, "Where's Gary? Where's Gary?" We're really excited to be here with you. So Gary Sheng is a fellow LinkedIn Creator Accelerator member. Lots of words. I know it sounds almost like a fundraising appeal, but it's really great. And Gary, we're going to ask you so much about your projects. I've read and I've chatted with you about the Dream DAO, about your nonprofit Civics Unplugged, and it's we need to learn about it. But I also have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in that just how silos work in people's minds. And it seems like we got into the digital and crypto silo, and we have some fantastic deep fans of that in philanthropy today. But I'm going to work hard to get what we learned today with you out into the world. So that's my promise. And with that, Gary, tell us about your projects. And I have so many questions, but just give us an overview. Civics Unplugged.
Yeah. So Civics Unplugged was I'm a co-founder of Civics Unplugged. Me and my co-founders came together because we were like, democracy is in crisis. I think it's kind of cliche to say this at this point, but believe it or not, even just 3 years ago when we started to really talk about this idea, we looked like, is that really the issue that you want to focus on? And what did we want to do about that? I think education is kind of the root of all problem solving in the world. And some of our co-founders are one of them was literally 16 at the time. Another one was a vice principal and civics and history teacher for 10 years. Another one ran for mayor of New York City. And so we have a lot of experience thinking about the state of education, the state of civic leadership in the country, and we weren't impressed. We weren't impressed by I don't think that I have to explain why we shouldn't be impressed by the state of our leadership today. But instead of just complaining about it, we were like, let's do something about it. Obviously, this is a very long-term play because we're focused on high schoolers. But we started our first leadership program called the Civics Unplugged Civic Innovators Fellowship in 2020. We started with 40 states in the U.S. By the second one, it got to 40 countries. The next one had 45, and then now we just started our fourth program, which is 50 states and 50 countries, which is pretty mind blowing, and it's kind of almost embarrassing to me because I'm learning new countries because of the kids that I'm able to interact with on a day-to-day basis.
Wow.
And one of the reasons why we connected was because of a big project that Civics Unplugged launched called Dream DAO, which was our foray into Web3. So we already had this kind of general problem of not developing the high quality civic leaders, civic innovators. And it's doubly true for people that are in Web3. There's not enough social impact ethos in the crypto space. Almost obvious probably to a lot of people that are watching this. And so we were like, not only should we be educating civic-minded high schoolers in Web3 on how to use it to do good, we have a unique opportunity because that intersection is so nascent that they can actually build the future of that, and they can be the future of Web3 and social impact. So it's not just a lot of people think about education, it's just it's a kind of empty head and you're pouring the water of knowledge in people's heads. It's no one's an expert. Few people are experts in Web3, and almost no one's an expert in Web3 X social impact, right? And so what an opportunity it is what a privilege it is for me and the co-founders to have launched the Dream DAO, and what an opportunity is for the kids to actually pioneer a intersection.
That's amazing, Gary. And boy, do I agree so much with you. So talking about your mission first, how do you teach these civic leaders, right? And I think that there's a lot of writing about how the explosion of information has created groups, but lots of these groups are more about tearing things down than about building up, right?
Yeah.
And I think about a book by Martin Gurri, and there's a bunch of stuff out there. How do you go about it?
So I was actually just writing this down, the dichotomy that you're kind of pointing at, and not everyone has to agree with this dichotomy, but and the word activist is not all bad, right? But a lot of what people think of activists is like pointing out someone or something's flaws, and they're almost irredeemably bad. A lot of virtue signaling, a lot of debating to win, a lot of fundamental pessimism, zero-sum mindset, success equals bad, tear them down, anger, resisting, the world is happening to me, I'm not an agent in the world, right? And so much of this is like a mindset of, and also it's not just it's a mindset, it's also like a ontology about how the world is, right? And so what do we call our alumni of our Civic Innovators program? We call them builders. We want to like a kind of, I'm kind of like saying this in jest, but we want to brainwash our kids into thinking that they can do whatever they want, right? That they can change the world, they can build the future, they can build relationships, they can build communities and projects that support human and planetary flourishing. We're not trying to train the next virtue signalers. We want to train people that let the work speak for itself, because they're changing systems and they're making people's lives better. They're fundamentally optimistic. Something that I like to say is optimism is the new punk. Like it's so rare. Like, do you know that of our elected leaders today, 3% are optimistic. 3%. It's actually punk to be optimistic. And it's not just like, oh, like I'm a contrarian and only 3%. It's like, you have to be optimistic to actually to have reason to eventually actually be proven right that your optimism was correct. You know what I mean? It's like, it's self-fulfilling.
Totally.
Pessimism is self-fulfilling. Optimism is self-fulfilling, right? Especially if you're building while you're being optimistic, right? It's not like like I'm sitting on my butt and doing nothing and like I'm optimistic and like, okay, that's fine. But like,
it's not daydreaming, it's building.
No, our optimism is is what some people call a definite optimism. We're optimistic because we're building the future, right? And there's a little bit of nice delusion to it, right? Because like, would you rather be delusional about your ability to make a positive difference, or would you rather be delusional about? I see my co-founders talking to literally trying to find where I am doing this live stream. What's up, Tadashi? That's hilarious. And so builders celebrate when people realize their potential. They don't see success, and of course, a lot of successful people have done a lot of bad things, and so there's a nuance there. But like, it's about celebrating like their peers and their mentors and partners when they're realizing the potential, not being afraid of their own success as well. It's about taking responsibility. It's about trying to be a badass that shapes the world.
That's so cool. And I guess this is going to lead into a reflection on what communities mean to you, because I think your perspective would be amazing. A lot of kind of the Facebook definition of a community is just a place that has lots of engagement. Yeah. Whereas I see communities as a place that could have a tremendous amount of power to get things done, right? Yeah. How do you guys, again, how do you teach that? What is even the mindset? Or do you go into the tools and you're looking at Web3 or?
So you don't need Web3 to build a really vibrant community. If you want to just quickly touch on that. Thriving communities and transformative communities have been built for millennia, right? And so it's a crutch to think that a technology is going to change your ability or lack of ability to create community. So let's talk about community. I think corporations have co-opted the word community for far too long. If L'Oreal, sorry L'Oreal, if you're watching, if L'Oreal has a Facebook community, right? Or they call their Twitter following a community. It's like, maybe, but like,
that's an audience.
If the people in the community think that that's the best community that they're part of, that kind of speaks to a lot of the problem, because there's not many like civic associations where like everyone's coming together with shared values. even if the whole point is just belonging, right? And it's not like to change the world. Like a community needs to be built on like one-to-one relationships between community members at its most basic level. And for communities of impact, which is what Civics Unplugged focuses on, there is a shared vision, there's a shared mission, there's shared values, there's shared rituals, there's shared educational materials, there's shared language or shared like illustrations. All this is really important. Like we at Civics Unplugged, we really pay attention to why certain movements have succeeded or failed, and you can sort of see like a community as an entity, right? Just like humans, like humans, if you don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't have good friends, you don't have meaningful work, like you're not going to flourish. The sort of same a lot of the same sort of questions can be applied to communities. There's a lot of like determinants of there's a lot of like things that are necessary to ensure that a community flourishes. Like I said, those rituals, all those like things that these shared context, vision, etc. A community has, and so you can sort of like make a checklist. Like, is this group that I'm a part of? Does it like number one, how does it make you feel? And if it wasn't part of your life, how would it be different? And if your life is way better because of a community, that's a really good sign.
Yeah, boy, that resonates so deeply. I have to say, this little community that we've created, and we have some people in the chat, the Donor Participation Project, has just been amazing for us. You talked about virtue signaling, and I remember when we first chatted, I started to think, boy, Gary's seeing a lot of the same things that we see in kind of old-fashioned fundraising, and for those that have gone to events with their alma mater, you'll see the name tag and the 500 different flags, and we're talking about the equivalent of that. So, there's still a certain component of virtue signaling, right? When you own an NFT, you want to put it places. Is that still kind of a driver that do you use that? I mean, like you see it, right? Is that something that you purposefully use or just consider?
So, yeah, let's talk about human nature. I think humans want to be associated with things that they think are good. It's kind of a good way to boil it down. And I think there unfortunately, when there's a mismatch between saying that you are good versus actually doing good, that's what creates a lot of issues, right? That gap. So how do you, like for us, you don't even get the right to show your DreamDAO NFT, which is like a cute little astronaut, if you didn't give DreamDAO like at least $300, right? And so and that was us saying like a minimum contribution by an adult of $300 is a worthwhile contribution, right? Different communities can have different levels of like thresholds for what it means to be a good contributor. Like, and I'll also encourage everyone on this call to think about it's probably not just monetary contributions that you value in your community, unless it's like a pure finance, like it's almost like a hedge fund that you're building. Like what you probably value certain kinds of sweat equity, right? And you probably want to find ways to, like, if you're just talking about like a membership NFT, for example, you probably want to find ways for people to earn the NFT instead of having to just pay for it. Does that make sense?
A lot. So like inserting friction, right? I see that in like successful communities. It's not so easy to join or to,
for sure, for sure. And it's important that the ways that we signal that we are good people actually say something beyond that we decided to tweet today. It needs to like be attached to like a meaningful statement about like what the way that you decide to show up in the world in a fundamental way. And the way that we basically engineered it is such that you have, so here's an example. One thing that a kind of brilliant young NYU student did to earn her way into the DreamDAO was to proactively create UX mockups for
I saw that. I saw that in the Discord.
Oh, really? Nice. So the potential community members can actually pitch the community like, hey, like you're missing this thing. I can provide it, right? Let's do a value exchange, right? Okay.
So what totally amazes me, okay, and this has happened maybe like 2 or 3 times in my life, is when people coming from extremely different backgrounds, kind of just following their first principle thinking, get to a very point that is very common. This is, it's happening to me now with you. It's happened to me with a gentleman called Jim Langley, who is kind of in another area of philanthropy. But there's some really good comments here in the chat that I wanted to share with you. Lindsay Tippings, he says he loves the comments around optimism, social impact. In both these places, I'm curious why there isn't much overlap. So happy to see people attempting to change this. So you're an engineer by background, and you mentioned the word engineering this system, whereas lots of fundraisers kind of fall into it and then, try to talk their way out of it. Tell us about yourself, your background, how you got to this place.
So I didn't know what I wanted to study in college. I went to Duke, and I was lucky that I had some people, adult like mentor type people that believed in me and was like, you got to understand tech even if you don't want to be in full time. I was lucky to have gotten internships in Silicon Valley, different startups that were like, yeah, you haven't written a line of code. I wrote my first line of code when I was a sophomore in college. I felt so behind. I would also say, even if you're learning it now, it's not too late. But I had no civic mindset at all until 2016, where I saw that our democracy was very fragile. And it took me a few years to fully make the leap outside of Google, because I actually did not know much, and I didn't know where I would be best value added to society. So what I like to I'm like the kids in the community know how often I say this. It's all about your U-shaped hole in the world. It's all about your U-shaped hole in the world. So YOU shaped hole. So like your place in the world where your passions and your superpowers meet humanity's needs, right? So where is that? Where do you plug in? And for people that have a lot of passions and a lot of superpowers and a lot of insight about what problems are on the world, you have multiple U-shaped holes. But I would say like the first 25 years of your life, but also just forever, your number one priority should be figuring out at least one reasonable U-shaped hole for you to plug into. And so for me, right, that happened to be like, wow, like the way that we're training young civic leaders there's nothing to do with how could this not be more relevant than digital organization, digital community building, learning how to like just manage your tasks online, learning how to send email. And this is just the non-traditional civic side, right? And then like you layer on all the other like civic and the groundbreaking thinking about how to make the world better. It's like systems thinking, complexity theory, sense making, all these things where you combine that, and it's like now you have a meaningful leadership curriculum. And so I'm not saying that we are fully implementing everything we know we need to implement. We're early on in this journey, but it's been really cool. Just you asked me about my journey and like how I bring tech into it. It's like everything about how this organization has been built is based on first principles, like systems mindset. That I do give a lot of credit to my 4 years at Google for helping me think about like building efficient systems, eliminating redundancies, et cetera.
Okay, let's get super specific. What is your tech stack for building a digital community? And I guess that changes all the time. So right now.
Right. So I'm not going to pull up that LinkedIn post where I wrote, because
that's what I was thinking about.
a minute, but so we use a number of tools, and it's actually very hard to find a single platform that streamlines us all, because communities are so different and they have different needs. But we use Notion for a lot of things, especially documentation. a lot of where we store all of our meeting notes, stuff like that. We use Zoom for meetings where it's really important that people from all around the world can actually tune in, because a lot of the newer cool collaboration video platforms are not great in other continents. And that's actually
Interesting.
You wouldn't actually think about it until you're actually, oh crap, our kids in India are having a really hard time right now.
Huh.
We use Slack for team. We use email for a lot of things, right? Especially so, the rule is kind of like, if you send an email, it's important, and then for really important, and people should read it. And then for Slack is when it's just hey Nick, where's that one document related to this? It's more just kind of one-off sort of conversations. We use iMessage for a lot of our communication still as a team. We use Discord for our community, of our kids. And I'm not necessarily recommending that for people that are not in Gen Z. I think Gen Z is just so used to the chaos of infinite notifications.
It is, yeah.
There's other good platforms for people. I think that millennials, especially older millennials and up, they're more used to a forum type format where you kind of take your time to write multiple paragraphs and you post it, and then people on their own time, asynchronously, they write their own responses to that. And I think that's fine. That's cool. Different communities have different demographics of people, and you got to serve them differently. So circle.so is actually, I believe, a platform that's pretty cool for older communities. And then a platform that I really love, which doesn't work that well outside of the US, but it's I think it'll just get better and better, is butter.us. Butter.us, I tried it. It's the most magical meeting, collaborative meeting, lecture session platform that I've seen.
How amazing. I'm on it right now. Looks amazing. So folks, Gary, is it okay if I ask people to connect with you if they're interested in learning more about your work or
Yeah, sure.
Communities, all of that?
Please. Yeah. Send me a connection request on LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. So recommended reading. So if somebody's on here and is interested, what has been influential for you? Or blogs, or communities.
I would really look into what the Consilience Project is doing with Daniel Schmachtenberger, Zach Stein, that whole crew. They're really thinking about the future of humanity, existential risks. One of the existential risks is just information overload and warfare.
Yeah, totally.
I think this is relevant for everyone. Everyone just should be thinking about, how does information travel in the modern age. I think there's a really good podcast, literally entirely about the concept of attention, by Tristan Harris, that you might want to check out. What else? Let me just look at my
very cool. And it can be and you're sharing these amazing resources, and this is feeling like it's going to be one of your LinkedIn posts, maybe. We get lucky.
So the Realignment podcast is a really good podcast when thinking about the future of America, and especially as it relates to geopolitics.
Wow, this is great. Okay, so does Civics Unplugged have a way for people that are not direct participants in your project to get involved? Do you want people on your website and connected with you in that way?
Yeah, so the easiest way to support us is to go to our website, www.civicsunplugged.org. You'll see a invest button at the top right. It'll take you to a page where there's simple instructions for how to donate. Honestly, that's by far the most impactful thing that you could be doing. And beyond, and then related to that, it's connecting us with foundations that you think might be really interested in what we're doing. We don't fit neatly into one kind of traditional box. We are like a civic education, but we're also sort of a movement where we're also doing a lot of media. But fundamentally, we're changing kids' lives. And if you, if you are someone or you know someone that really cares about the future of, you really empowering Gen Z, care about the future of American democracy, talk to me for sure.
Awesome. You might get a couple of calls. I saw you were hiring, right? The grants writer.
Yeah. So, yeah. Also, if you're a grant writer, let me know. So.
Very cool. That's this crew here today. So we'll make sure to get the message out. If anybody has any last questions in the chat while we wrap up, Melissa's asking, is that Tristan Harris? I think she was talking about the realignment podcast.
No. So yeah, the Attention podcast is Tristan Harris. Yep.
Oh, okay. The Attention podcast. Okay. I'm opening all these tabs. I'm going to check all of this out. I recommend everybody does the same. So, this is about it. I'm really excited to have been here with you today, to have learned a little bit. We didn't really go into, a lot of the similar pieces, but I think kind of we said, we kind of noted that it's, not the best part of the human being, right? Where all the status signaling and the virtue signaling and all that.
Well, so do you want to talk about that for a couple minutes?
Okay, yeah, sure.
We're talking about just fundraising.
Yes, exactly. So, let me just say a couple of things that you shared with me that I said, oh my goodness, this is like the equivalent of this other thing. Yeah. So you shared that when people buy NFTs, especially philanthropic NFTs, a part of it is being able to signal that, you're a good person too, and maybe make a good investment in the meantime. And I said, well, okay, if you want to signal, you need to be able to
I think so. While he's reconnecting, I'll talk about. Louis, you're back.
Oh, I'm back. It was me. Sorry.
No worries. Finish your thought.
Yeah. So I was saying that the first time we met, you shared that one of the reasons people bought NFTs was to kind of show the world that they are good people, especially if they're philanthropic NFTs. And I asked you, well, where do people share this? Because they want other people to see them who they care about. And you said mostly Twitter. Are we connected? I'm not sure.
Yes, we are. So it's not normalized to not just have your picture and your profile picture, and also where else would you show it on LinkedIn if you're not changing your profile picture? So that's kind of that's an interesting question for people that want to help their donors signal things. It's a question. It's an interesting question for social media networks. But where I kind of see things going is people have something like an on-chain verified record of their philanthropy. Because let me just be blunt. Like,
that'd be cool.
If someone tells, so here's actually a really good thing for all of you to ponder. So one of my co-founders says he knows like several people that hosted Obama's first fundraiser. That can't be true, right? And I also would imagine that when someone says something like that, I hosted Obama's first fundraiser, you just don't believe them, right? And I think rightfully so. And I think we need to evolve to a way of tracking philanthropic commitments such that I don't have to trust you to know that was true or not, right? That's an antiquated way of doing things. Like, because there's too many people, there's too many game theoretic incentives for you to lie about how charitable you are, right? Or how ahead of the curve you were in supporting this one person or candidate or organization. Everyone, how many people are like, oh, like, let's say, Civics Unplugged is just like, is seen in the future as like this totally game-changing organization. How many people would be like, oh, I was there from day one and I was a big supporter, and like, you know what I mean? So like this is a basic issue that good new practices, new leveraging of technology can easily solve. It just kind of like, I feel like it's early adopting nonprofits and philanthropists will incrementally grow, and at some point it's going to be like boom, like there's like a common expectation that if you haven't logged your philanthropic contributions on chain, that no one is obligated to believe you.
That's true. And you brought up like the day one issue, and this is going partly off topic, but I've been posting and talking with some people on LinkedIn about, what are the incentives in nonprofits to, be that first one, to be that hugely innovative organization or person. And I think, DAOs are kind of solving that.
For sure.
Could you tell people who are not so familiar with the mechanics and how the NFTs work and all of that, how that is getting fixed?
Yeah, so the Web3 way of doing everything, and it's not just a monolith, but like a useful oversimplification is that the Web3 community is the crypto community that's trying to build useful applications on top of blockchain, is very interested in radical transparency and tracking meaningful things that happen on chain so that they're just remembered forever. And one of the things that the community has really bought into is your contributions to a for-profit or a nonprofit community to be tracked forever, right? And also the community's treasury to be transparent and every inflow and outflow being tracked. And so you can imagine, just like, I don't have to use any fancy jargon words here for all of us to ponder. If you have a nonprofit whose all their inflows and outflows are tracked, are transparent, and you're seeing them make an impact, you start to be like, I don't have to take the CEO's word for it that my $10 is actually going to go to kids, right? Or my $100 is going to go to kids. Like, I can actually see on chain that actually happened, right? And so you don't have to be using blockchain, which makes it actually very hard to hide what you're doing, to adopt kind of first principles of transparency and basically accounting, for where things are going. But the answer is almost of course more donors would flock to supporting good causes if they could actually they didn't have to trust that someone was telling them the truth about where money was being spent.
Trust is a huge issue in nonprofits. You're totally right. And maybe this is the solution. I sure kind of believe it's somewhere along this path for sure.
I think right now, to create a nonprofit that operates in a DAO-like format, which is just more decentralized, more transparent, less corrupt. It's, even if you want to do that, it's hard. That's a big problem, right? Like, it's almost obvious. It's almost obvious that it's going to be the case where there's someone that creates a platform that makes it easy to spin up a nonprofit DAO.
Please, wherever you are in the world.
No, seriously. I mean, it starts with just even identifying there's this gap. There's a gap of we have the Civics Unplugged team happens to be a team with a board of very crypto savvy founders and board members that are also I actually coded the NFT smart contract.
Wow.
I just learned it, and I'm not a super coder, but I know that I would not no one should be ashamed of being where do I even start with NFTs and DAOs and NFTs as membership, and all of that should be like almost like in a wizard format, right? Like you like almost like TurboTax, where you just like
Oh my.
you know, like even though I hate doing taxes, it's like it should be as easy as like a wizard. It's like, okay, now you have to create a name for your DAO, and it's like, oh, okay, how do you want membership to work? Okay, here are the trade-offs between these kind of like membership voting options, right? It needs to be that, it needs to be that simple. Otherwise, here's my joke I like to say. You have to be both today in the state of our DAOs and DAO tooling, especially social impact DAO tooling. You have to be a philosopher king and a workaholic and a technologist, right? So the philosopher king, workaholic, and technologist to just do basic things like be transparent and show where money's going.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've been doing some experiments, of course, at a kind of level, a dummy level of technological knowledge, but people it was really hard even to sell an NFT on OpenSea.
Sure.
And it reminds me a little bit of like when people were building e-commerce sites on Lisp and the very beginnings.
We need a Shopify. That's great. Thank you for bringing that up. We need a Shopify for nonprofit DAOs.
Yeah, exactly. This is amazing. So I think we're going to end with this call because, you're out there, the person that knows how to do this and that can bring it together. I think you'll find lots of people supporting this.
Right.
Gary, it's been amazing to have you on today and to be able to chat with folks here.
Yeah. Louis, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for all the great comments. I really appreciate it. And again, feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Connect with Gary Sheng here on LinkedIn or on Twitter or wherever you find him. He's everywhere. Take care.
All right. See ya.